Hi, this is Welcome to Self, and I'm your host, Dr. Hayley D. Quinn, fellow human, business owner, and the anti-burnout business coach. I'm here for service-based business owners like you to help you increase your own self-care and self-compassion, change the relationship you have with yourself and your business, and help you elevate your business to a new level so you can live the full and meaningful life you desire. We are all on a continual learning journey, so let's learn together. Welcome to Self is a place where you can come and learn about the practices that will assist you as a business owner and get tips on how to engage in your business in a way that is sustainable for you. You will realise that you're not alone in the ways that you struggle, because at times we all do. And I'm happy to share with you what I've learned through my own struggles and my experiences of running businesses. You can join me as I chat to wonderful guests and have your curiosity piqued about various topics. And I'll also bring you solo bite-sized business episodes that can easily fit into your day. This is a place to remember that you are human first and have different tasks in your business and different roles in your life that need your attention. And for that, you need to take care of yourself in the best way you can. This is a place of nourishment, growth, and helpful information. A place where you can learn ways to assist you and your business to thrive. Because remember, if you thrive, your business can too. Now let's get to the episode. Hi, and welcome to another episode and another awesome guest chat. Before I introduce my next guest, I just want to remind you that a waitlist for our Welcome to Self, Time to Thrive group coaching program is open, and doors to the program will open very soon. So get yourself on the waitlist to be among the first to hear the details and get an action taker bonus as well. You can find the link to join the waitlist in the show notes. I'm excited to introduce my next guest, Emma Edwards. Emma is a content creator, podcaster, financial educator, and author of Good with Money. She has run her online platform, The Broke Generation, since 2018, producing educational content that encourages people to get financially engaged, break unhelpful spending habits, and build a positive relationship with money. She recently completed graduate study in financial psychology and behavioural finance and obtained a designation as a certified financial behaviour specialist. Having experienced her own challenges with spending, saving, and budgeting, Emma is passionate about making it cool to manage your money with intention. She says that getting to know yourself is an act of financial empowerment, and that breaking out of the conditioning that keeps us spending and finding your flow with money is the ultimate form of self-care. Emma grew up in the UK and has lived in Melbourne since 2015 with her husband and cat. Emma and I agreed we could have chatted together all day. Luckily, we did a poddy swap, so if you love this episode, you can go and check out my episode on her podcast, The Broke Business. She also has a podcast called The Broke Generation. Join me as I welcome Emma to the podcast and buckle up. You're going to love this one. Hi, Emma. Welcome to the podcast. Thanks so much for joining me.
I'm so excited to be here, Hayley. Thanks for having me.
That's great. I've been following you on socials. I don't remember how I first came across you, but I've been following you on socials for such a long time. And whilst I am somebody who I think I manage a budget well, I manage my money quite well, I think like many people, I still fall into the traps of, consumerism. Particularly in my business, another shiny thing. Perhaps I need that software, or perhaps I need that platform, or perhaps I need to buy that course. So I do, like everybody, get caught up in that. And I think you manage these things really well. But before we get into all that, could you just start with kind of telling us who you are, what you do, and why you started doing what you do?
Of course. And yeah, just a quick nod to what you said. Spending in business. If you're a natural spender in your life like me, you will massively spend in business too. So that's kind of, a whole other thing that I want to get into on my own podcast as well. So thanks for the reminder. In answer to your question, I started doing what I do in 2018 when I was on my own financial journey. I was in my like mid 20s, had always been a bit of a hot mess with money. I did sort of the right things in like I didn't not pay my rent and things like
Yeah.
that. But I did get myself into a bit of credit card debt, but I just had this kind of chronic problem that it was bad, but I didn't really feel like it was that bad. It just allowed me to defer the responsibility to further responsibility. Oh, I'll pay it off when I get such and such a job, or when I'm done with this and
Yeah.
this and this, and when this, when that. So I started to get serious and started really breaking down why all of these budgets I was scribbling on the back of a napkin weren't actually translating to my behavior. And that's when I kind of uncovered that it wasn't so much resources or structural problem. Obviously,
Mm.
more money is always going to help to some degree, but it was more of a behavioral, emotional thing. And that's really where
Yeah.
the change happened. So I started talking about it online, kind of varying levels of being general. Sometimes I was a bit more like practical financial literacy, budgeting. I spoke a little about investing for a while, but then there was some legal changes in Australia, so I had to stop doing that.
Yeah.
But then sort of since 2020, 2021, I've really moved more into the behavioral aspects. I went on
Yeah.
to study financial psychology through a college in the US, really emerging field over there, fascinating field of research. And yeah, now I really focus on that, why we do the things we do with money and why it's actually
Yeah.
an ongoing, almost personal development journey to become good with money. And that is the title of my most recent book that came out in February.
Yeah. Fantastic. So what did you do before all this? Like what was your background? You're obviously from the UK, like
Yeah.
myself. When did you come over to Australia? What were you doing for work before you did this?
Oh, no one's ever asked me this story before. Yeah, I came over to Australia in 2015 because I was in a long distance relationship with my now husband. So
Mm.
long distance can work. And I kind of love that we define the odds. We had met when he was traveling in the UK about 18 months before. And, visas and things like that. He'd had his working holiday visa there. I had never had one
Mm.
here. So I kind of came over for 7 months or something, 6 months. I had a return flight because I didn't know if it would work out or not. It would have been
Yeah.
delusional to be like, I'm moving to Australia forever. So I came over, and at that point I'd sort of made job decisions. It was right at the point, so I was 23, 24 at the time. I'd finished uni when I was 22 because I did a 4-year course, and I was just at that point when I started this long distance relationship. I was just at that point where I was starting to apply for proper jobs,
Yeah.
and I was also working in a restaurant at the time, and I was living in London, and salaries on those entry level jobs are really low, obviously, as they are everywhere. I'd studied marketing at uni, but all in a very kind of last minute situation. I probably shouldn't have gone to uni in the rush state that I did, but everybody
Yeah.
around me was doing it, so I did it. And I
Yeah.
really wanted to move out of home. So that was like my driver. If you go to uni, you can get a student loan and move out of home. So I did. And I don't regret that from a life experience perspective. But yeah,
Yeah.
career wise, all a bit fuzzy at this point. I ended up getting offered a job that I turned down because, which is, everybody would tell you don't do this. But I turned it down, one, because there were a few red flags, but it would have been a really great place to start a career. Um, but I knew that I wouldn't be able to maintain this long distance relationship if I didn't have flexibility.
Yeah.
Whereas at my restaurant job, that actually didn't pay, probably paid a little bit more by the time you factor in tips and things like that in UK tipping culture. I was kind of like, oh, I can get more flexibility here. I can take time off and just not get shifts, go and visit my partner, or have time off when my partner was
Yeah.
visiting. So I did that, which I think if you had, a high achieving pressure from parents, that probably would have, people probably would have talked you out of it. But I was,
Yeah.
I was pretty new what I was doing. I was like, oh, I'm doing it, whatever, you can't talk me
Yeah.
out of it. And so that meant I came to Australia when, that year and a half later, when I said, well, I'll go over for a period of time and kind of see. I was then, 24 with kind of no career experience. I was a fantastic waitress, but that was about it. I had like a placement year in my uni course, thank God. So I had some like
Yeah.
working experience, but yeah, the biggest thing for me was coming over to Australia with really nothing. I thought, how am I going to get like a quote unquote proper job? I know you shouldn't say that, but that was going through my head.
Yeah.
So I just went kind of wild on I sent out a bunch of emails before I even came over, trying to get work in sort of marketing, social media, digital, whatever. Because by this point, I really wanted to be a copywriter and
Yeah.
use words. I didn't really know that existed, but that's what I'd wanted to do. And so I got a bit of traction in that area. Thankfully, I did a couple of sort of internships that eventually became jobs. And so by trade, I'm a writer, or I guess I'm a communicator. So that's kind of what propelled me to take this financial journey and communicate it online. At that
Yeah.
point, we were really seeing a rise of social media. I was thinking, what do I learn about on social media? Well, celebrities and workouts and winged eyeliner and things like that. And I thought, well, maybe we can learn about money too. And that's really, it's really boomed. The money management has really become into the mainstream in the last few years, which is so helpful compared to what you and I probably would have had when we were early in
Yeah.
our lives.
Absolutely. I love that. I love your story. I love as well that you made a choice to stay in a job that perhaps wasn't seen as the path you should be taking because the relationship in your life was important to you. And I love that when we actually tune in and think about what's important to us and make decisions that are aligned for ourselves. I mean, you've got where you've got where you want to be. You're running a successful business. It didn't matter that it looked different to what perhaps society would tell us, like go to university and then get a job in relation to what you studied in university and work 9 till 5 and be in an office and those sort of things. I love that. And in terms of the long distance relationship, I mean, you can't get more long distance, can you?
Yeah.
I remember when I moved over here, my dad said to me, gosh, if you'd moved any further, you'd actually be on your way back.
It's actually so true.
So, that you've made that work and then you came over here. I was 25 when I came over. Very similar, turned up like, oh, what am I going to do? And then you've kind of seen this need, a real gap, isn't it? Particularly, I think, for women. I think women have not been encouraged over the times to think about money or think about making money, certainly not think about making good money, or saving or investing and those sort of things. So I think the work that you do is fantastic. And I think the way you put yourself across as well on social media is so fun and engaging.
Oh,
I mean, we
thank you.
really see you and your personality and that sort of stuff, which I think
My love of cheesels.
Your love of cheesels, yes.
Yeah, it's funny when you say about women, because I think that there's so many facets of that conversation about how women have been left out of financial conversations. I guess the top level of that is, women aren't taught to invest, women are taught to coupon cut and things like that. But I think what's really necessary, particularly now, is not only are women taught to be financially independent, we're taught to hand over our money for all of these other things. It's actually both ends of the scale. We're not included in that top end where you invest your money and you grow your money and you build financial independence. We're actually taught the exact opposite. It's not only exclusion by omission, it's deliberate exclusion, because if we're not doing those things, we can be buying cellulite creams, slimming clothes, all of the overconsumption that is conditioned into us, particularly now on social media.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, absolutely. I'm not a big shopper. I was raised by a shopper. I think that did
Oh, so
me
you
a
went
lot
the
of
other way.
favors. I was like, ah. So I'm not a huge shopper. But like I said before, I do get caught up in stuff and, things come across our bow constantly online, on the telly, as we're walking around. And it is hard for people, isn't it?
It
I
is.
work with business owners and I always talk to them about the importance of knowing their numbers, not just the business numbers, but also the personal numbers. If we don't know how much money we've got or how much money we need or the expenses that we have both in life and business, I think it's really, really hard to make decisions.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
I completely agree. And I think that there's a lot of, especially in modern times, every time I say that, I feel like a dinosaur, but I don't know any other way to describe it, where business is very accessible. You don't need a business plan. You don't need to go and present a bunch of numbers to a bank to get a loan. You can start a business with very, very little. And I love that. However, but you can also blow up very quickly as well in terms of success, and also failure. But you can be managing a lot of cash flow quite quickly with not that necessarily that much planning. And I think knowing your numbers is really, really important. I really like the book Profit First,
Mhm.
whether you implement the system or not. It really kind of speaks to almost what I would call a personal finance approach to your business finances. It really
Yeah.
gets you to, because that's what I say to individuals, and it applies to businesses too. When money comes in, whether that's through your salary or through an invoice being paid, you have to do something
Mm.
strategic with it. You've got to organize it, because
Yeah.
otherwise you just don't know. Otherwise, all your, a lot of people in their first year of business don't understand tax implications,
Yes.
which actually was a huge advantage for me because I had to learn the tax system coming over to a new country. So by osmosis, by extension, because I had an ABN very early on in my time over here because I was freelancing and whatever,
Yeah.
I learned the tax system really early so I didn't make all those mistakes, which is
Same.
almost unusual. Usually in early in business, you don't know, but I was, on the phone to the ATO so much.
Yeah,
Um,
I was a single parent when I first finished uni here and started a business. And
mm.
I got somebody from the ATO to come out and talk to me.
Oh, did you?
And I was so glad I did,
Yeah.
because now when I'm working with people, I hear the stories so often that
Mm.
people, oh, I've got this tax debt.
Mm.
I don't know how I'm going to get on top of it. And I didn't have that experience because I was always, I guess, being a single parent for a long time, I was very mindful of always having enough money to pay for things.
Yeah.
So I made sure I was like that in my business as well. But this is such a thing for people, isn't it? That they don't understand about. You need to put away money to pay back the GST.
Yep.
You know,
The
if you're charging
GST.
GST, you've got to pay tax. Not all the money you make is actually your money.
Yeah, especially if you start something on the side and you're on an income, in
Yeah.
Australia, we have quite high taxation brackets. So even if you're earning a very modest wage, particularly if you live in a
Mm.
capital city, the income you make on the side, you'll be paying 32.5% tax on that. That's
Yeah.
a lot. And it's not more tax. It feels like more tax.
Mm.
But it's funny, you hear when you're talking about tax and money with other business owners, you hear very experienced, very high income earning business owners, or
Yeah.
high revenue generating, I should say, still making tax mistakes,
Mm.
still misrepresenting what a deduction is. It's not free. You
Yeah.
still got to pay for it. And
Yeah.
tax is so important, and knowing your numbers is so important. Knowing what I say, there's two most important numbers in business that are what I've always carried through and what I always have my eye on. Particularly if you're a sole trader, I'm still a sole trader,
Yeah.
so slightly different. But your base running costs that come in
Mhm.
every single month, and also the minimum you need to be paying yourself. What
Yeah.
is your rent? What are your bills? What is a small amount of groceries? Like, because then okay, I need 5 grand to feed myself and keep the lights on in the business,
Yeah.
and then add tax onto that.
Yeah.
And I think that really helps a lot of people, because something that I found when I went into business from being employed is that your view of numbers is distorted,
Yeah.
because you might go, that example, say you need 2.5 grand for your base running costs and you need 2.5 grand to pay yourself. So you pay rent and groceries or
Yeah.
whatever. Just, I'm picking round numbers. Then you go, okay, I need to make $5,000. And then you go, oh, hang on, tax. So I really need to be making 7K
Yeah.
before there's any whipped cream on top,
Yeah.
which you might go, well, I wasn't making 7K a month in my job. Like, what?
Yeah.
And I think that's how a lot of people get stuck. They think, yeah, I'm bringing in 5 grand a month. Like, I'm doing really well.
Mm.
But you have to pay to earn that money. And you have to reserve your own
Absolutely.
tax and your own superannuation
Yeah.
and your own bills. And
Yeah.
suddenly, I know 10K months, that kind of narrative in the business counting space, kind of a lot of it comes out of countries, the AUD numbers, the math
Yeah.
doesn't math when it's AUD. But again, you can be making 10, 15K a month and still be really struggling
Yeah.
because of, you know, well, 15K, well, five of it's gone already
Yeah.
to tax and expenses and da da da. There's not, I think you
Yeah.
really need to completely forget everything you know about numbers and get into the business mindset of numbers.
Yeah. I've had people say to me, when I'm coaching people, do you think I need to put away money for sick pay and holiday pay? And I said, well, if you want to pay yourself when you're sick or you want to go on holiday, then yeah.
Absolutely. And it's funny, you think about, a lot of people go into, and it's not a bad goal to have, a lot of people go into business trying to match what they were earning in their job as a starting point. But I said to somebody the other day, I'm thinking, you might earn $78,000 in that job, but you get paid $78,000 plus super, plus sick pay for 11 months of work, sometimes 10 and a half, not
Yeah.
12.
Yeah.
Whereas we don't ever build in leave. And we're
Yeah.
probably working way more hours than we were in the job anyway. And I think it's really funny to think about that. When you take it on face value, there's one pathway to get there. And then when you
Yeah.
actually break it down, there's a lot more. It can be overwhelming to think, God,
Yeah.
I've got to make 150K if I want to pay myself a 100K salary. Like,
Yeah.
ooh, that's a lot.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Mm,
absolutely. And I think we can lose track. You said at the beginning if you're a spender, and thankfully I'm not overly a spender, but I still have stuff. I went through my Zero account the other
mm,
day and looked at I did some reports looking at everywhere that I'm spending money, my hosting things, platforms,
mm.
subscriptions. Ooh, that's always a fun one.
Yeah.
And looking at, what's on there and making a note of things like, okay, when's that due for renewal? Make sure I've cancelled it by then because
Mm,
there's stuff I just don't need to have
mm.
that I'm spending in my business.
I find that that's something I've really battled with, especially I think everybody battles, but I think it really your own relationship with money and spending outside of your business really plays into it, because
Absolutely.
something that I still struggle with to this day is trying to decide what is and isn't worth being spent on in your business, particularly when it comes to things like events or marketing or
Mm,
professional photography, updating your website. Like, it's not as simple as personal finance when you trim all the
no.
fat when you need to, because what is it costing you to cut those things? But at the same time, I've gone through a lot of my, when I'm reconciling expenses and stuff, and been kind of scratching my head a bit, being like, do I need to cut out those 2 events that were maybe $129 a ticket when meeting those people is a core part of my business? No, I haven't
Absolutely.
necessarily got a contract from that, but
Yeah.
it's, showing up and being part of the business community is not only, good for business, but also good for your sanity, as I'm sure you would
Absolutely.
know. Um,
Absolutely. And that's the thing, like you say, it's not black and white, is it? It's
no,
looking
whereas I
and
think
thinking sometimes the
mm.
money being spent is actually it's a cost and you're just spending it. And sometimes it's an investment.
Exactly. I always find this with like work travel, particularly being between Melbourne and Sydney. A lot of stuff happens in Sydney. And I'll
Yeah.
just go, you know what? Yeah, I'll go to Sydney. And then I'm thinking, to go to Sydney overnight, even if you stay in a very cheap hotel, I've got to get to the airport. I've got to get from the airport. I've got to get to and from the airport on the other side. You need
Yeah.
to eat something. You need to, and it adds up really quickly. And it's so
Yeah.
hard to, it's very easy to just justify it's business expense. But yeah, it's really hard to discern when is it an expenses problem, when is it an income problem, because
Yeah.
that's what's very different to personal finances, because you do have control over how much you earn as well. And
Yeah.
often people go, it's not your expenses, you just need to earn more money. But you don't want to keep earning more and more and more and spending it all on other business expenses. Lifestyle creep, business creep, it happens. Maybe
Absolutely.
normally you stay in the Ibis Styles, Sydney Central, but then when you start making a bit more money, you stay at a nicer hotel. And then all the fat gets trimmed in the same
Yeah.
way as with personal. It's a minefield, honestly.
Yeah. It's like when you said before, sometimes earning more money can help. But like you
Mm,
say, sometimes earning more money just means you spend differently. We do
exactly.
tend to live to our
Mhm.
income, don't we? We do tend to live to the lifestyle we can afford to live to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Especially when it comes to convenience or visibility or marketing or
Yeah.
that kind of thing. It's not it's very normal to go, oh well, I'm making more money now. I'll reinvest it back into the business to get photos and to get this and to go to that event or to do that course. You mentioned courses before. Such a big trap for so many people. Like, a lot of people
So many
constantly
people.
upskilling.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I won't go into too much detail because it's a whole other conversation. But having
Yeah.
studied financial psychology, there's a lot of that can be driven by other beliefs that we have about holding on to money or about success. And sometimes that kind of,
Absolutely.
I'll do this course and then I'll be this, and I'll do this course and then I'll be this.
Yeah.
And I found it myself. I've done a graduate diploma in financial psychology that cost me $25,000. I've written a book, and I still think I'll just do one more credential and then I'll be good enough. One more credential and then I'll be good enough. And
You
that's
don't need it.
I don't need to. I don't
Everybody
need to.
listen, you don't need it.
Yeah.
Unless you are completely starting out and you've
Mm,
got no experience and you've got no knowledge, then yes,
mm,
go and get educated,
mhm,
learn some stuff, be good at what you do.
mm,
But I see it so often. People say, oh, I'll just do this, I'll just do a training. And we're going to, you and I are going to talk on your podcast as well, and I'll probably talk more about this there, but we come from this threat-based drive position
Mm,
where, like you said, and then I'll be good enough, and
mm,
then I'll be credible.
mm,
But we need to kind of really just settle down and think
mm,
about, well, actually, you already are. I mean, you've done your training, you've written a book, you've got all that information. It's
mm,
obvious you know what you're talking about
mm,
when people follow you on social media.
mm.
So I think we do need to be really mindful of that. So there's different challenges in business, and I guess we've spoken about how this isn't just an easy thing. It can be complex. On some things, it is worth spending more money and not doing it on the cheap. Some things, it's better looking for a really cost-effective way to do things. And sometimes it's worth saying, you know what, I don't actually need to spend money on this at
Mm.
all. What are some of the other challenges that you find you have in business, and how do you navigate those?
I think the key challenges I have that aren't directly financial, but they're all financial because everything to do with business is financial. Self-doubt, future uncertainty, and just I think the intersection of mental health and being a business owner. It's really interesting when you have mental health experiences to varying degrees, and then you also have everything resting on your shoulders,
Yeah,
whether that's because you are literally a solo business owner, or even if you've got a team of 50 people, it's
yeah.
still all on you. It's an awful lot when
Mm.
and I know people have been running businesses for decades, centuries, but I think that's been the biggest challenge because you need to build it into your business model. You need to not only have a business that functions when you're like 10 out of 10 doing
Yeah,
great from a physical and a mental perspective, but also the way that what I mentioned before, I'll just do one more course and then I'll be good enough.
yeah,
Or having a social media presence, whether you've got 100 followers or 100,000 followers, people can get to you
yeah,
with their opinions, their reviews, rightly, however accurate they may be, in a way that is like we've never seen before.
yeah,
And it's sort of like, we look back on, particularly being from the UK, we look back on what the 90s were like for um, pop stars and things like that with
yeah,
tabloid media. And everybody watched
yeah,
the David Beckham documentary and saw how the tabloids absolutely ripped him to shreds. We've almost got this tabloid level of
yeah,
criticism for everyday people just trying to put food on their family's table.
yeah,
And the degree to which you let that get to you, and the comparison between other people, like everybody says social media is a highlight reel, but it doesn't stop you having a really bad day or losing a client or getting a bad review and then seeing it's as though the universe has its own algorithm and it will go, "Oh, you got a one-star review. I'm just gonna make sure that you're aware that everyone else got five-star reviews of their book." It just
yeah.
comes and, it's confirmation bias. We're seeking out the evidence, of course, but
Absolutely. You see that stuff because it fits with how you feel. Right? Everyone else is
exactly.
successful. Everyone else is doing really well.
Mm.
I'm doing really badly. I should probably give this up and go do something else.
Yeah. Oh, I think
Um,
about that a lot, and I hate that I think about that a lot, but
yeah,
it's just the outcome of the overwhelm. It's just that feeling that we all have where we wanna relieve that anxiety, so we go, "Oh, I'm just gonna go back to a job," and it's like a rash decision, and we never very rarely do we actually do it.
yeah,
I think it's like a relief mechanism in a way, just to
yeah.
be kind of like, you can go back to a job, and then we forget all the reasons
You
why we
left.
do what we do. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, this is the brain's way of problem solving, right?
Yeah.
It's like, how can I, we are 24/7. We have a default system, a threat system that we can default to, and all it cares about is getting safe.
Yeah.
And it's that thing of like, I don't feel safe. I feel uncertain, or I feel really crappy because I've had a bad review or something. How can I get safe? Oh, I'll go back to what I know.
Yeah.
But then when you sit and think, well, actually, I left that because I didn't enjoy it, or there was, whatever reasons. I think, in terms of taking care of our mental and physical health, this is something I'm really passionate about in the people I work with, in terms of how can we build thriving businesses whilst we're thriving ourselves. And that doesn't mean we feel great every
Yeah.
single day of the week, but really holding our own well-being as a core component of our
Mhm.
business.
Yeah. It's I think, I mentioned social media before and how it can distort the reality of people's businesses and their finances, but It's the same with what a thriving business looks like. We've sort of almost come accustomed to seeing a thriving business as loads of travel, or working by a pool, or
Mm.
carrying a Louis Vuitton bag, or being on really high profile podcasts, or public speaking, which is literally the number one fear. I'm like, show me somebody who is really calm and has a really calm day and gets their work done in a reasonable amount of time and has enough money in the bank to do the things that they need to do and the things that they want to do.
Yeah,
It's the same with personal lifestyle as well. It's actually a
yeah,
lot more muted than
absolutely.
it seems. But I think it can keep us, yeah, striving for things that we don't necessarily want and comparing what we've got or where we're at to other people. Or, when you say building a business where we're also business that's thriving where we're also thriving, it's the most important thing, isn't it? Because really, you're the best asset in the business. And
Oh,
if you're doing well,
absolutely.
a lot of the time, a lot of what we're comparing ourselves to is not other people's external world. It's their way of being able to express themselves confidently. It's like everyone looks so confident online, everyone's so good at public speaking. That's not because of something external. That's because they are, don't get me wrong, there's a degree of natural talent for certain people.
Yeah,
But a lot of the time it's because they're not doubting themselves. They're not comparing themselves. It's not because they've got all these external things or all these invoices being paid. It's more of an internal
yeah,
thing where they are well and they're okay,
yeah,
and they can do their work better and they can express their message better. And I think there's a lot of people out there, and I dip in and out of being that person. I've been on a bit of a business journey in the last few months, last 6 or 7 months, where I've really kind of started to turn things around. But for a long time there, I was one of those people that felt like I had this really important message that I wanted to get out there. And it just felt like I was like gagged almost, and I couldn't express myself and do my work, whether that's on social media or in public speaking or at running workshops or communicating with clients or
yeah,
customers or whatever. I was like, why is everybody else able to do this and I can't? Why is everybody else getting all of this return and positive feedback and impact that I'm not getting, even though I really believe in my message, but then I go to put it out there and it's just not translating. And it's because I wasn't, I guess, in a position to do that. And
yeah,
you strive for all the external things. I'll get that client, I'll get this, I'll just earn this much and then I'll feel better, or I'll do that course or whatever.
yeah.
But actually, having a business is the greatest personal development experience you'll ever go on. And I think when you lean
Absolutely.
into that and go, I actually need to work on myself, the business is the business. And the better I am, the better the business will be.
Absolutely. I mean, we are our greatest asset in our business. I mean, at the end of the day, if you don't have your health and well-being, you're not showing up to run your business. So your
Right.
business isn't, unless you're going to hand it over and pay lots and lots of money for other people, and
Mm.
you probably won't have lots and lots of money because you're going to be too ill to
Yeah.
be earning it. We need to take care of ourselves.
Okay.
And, when I always work with people and say, what is your definition of success?
Mm.
Let's think about your definition of success. Not what we're seeing, not like build a 6, 7 figure business, do this, work from everywhere in the world, travel every 5 minutes, earn lots of money and work 4 hours a week. I mean,
Mm.
yeah, maybe when you've done a decade of building a
Yeah.
business and then earning enough money to pay everyone else to run it so you can work four
Mm.
hours a week. But what's your own definition of success, and
Mm.
how can you take care of yourself? Not just, when you've finished all the stuff, but as you're going along, so that you are feeling in a place where you're aligned with what you're trying to do in your business and what you're trying
Mm.
to say. I love that you've been on that. I say to people all the time, a business, being a business owner is more of a personal journey than a business journey.
Oh, absolutely.
Like the business is
Especially
the
if you
easy bit
do.
then.
Yeah, exactly. The business is a skill that can be learned and can be taught
Yeah,
and you can get better at. The constant evolution is
yeah,
you. And I
yeah,
mean, I can attribute, I've worked with a business coach and she's more of a creativity confidence coach. And
yeah,
that's what really spoke to me, because I'm like, I don't need, well, no, I don't need, not to toot my own horn, but I'm not looking for that kind of
yeah,
like, scale and this much revenue. I
yeah,
need someone to help me
yeah,
as a business owner. And that's really what I love about what you do, because
yeah,
you're combining your knowledge of your clinical psychology knowledge and
yeah,
experience and understanding with a view of business. And it's
yeah,
like every business owner should have a therapist that is business informed, because
yeah,
it's such a unique experience.
yeah. Yeah, I mean that's became my passion of working with people who wanted to set up businesses, and it's like,
Yeah.
well, let's do it in a way that you set it up from the start
Mm.
with your well-being as a core component.
Yeah.
You know, we need to look at business strategy. We need to look at, you know, what do you need for your business and what softwares do you need and this, that, and the other, and what kind of legal documents do you need? But let's actually add in what do you need for yourself so that you can thrive and have a long-term business that you actually love.
Yeah.
Like I've been evolving my business and I love it. Like I look forward to doing the work that I do. You know, I don't get the sort of Sunday dreads like a lot of people do, or, you know, that anxiety on a Monday morning. And it is possible, you know, it's about the choices we make.
Definitely. It's possible, but it does require work.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's, you know, a lot of people escape. It's the same kind of conversation as money. You know, people start a business or leave their job to escape the rat race, to have freedom, to have security. People want money to have freedom, have security, but then they build themselves a 9 to 5, a 9 to 9. Or they don't define. I talk to people about like, what does money mean to you? And it's the same with business. What does business mean to you? What do you want those things for? Because every single person says freedom and security. But to one person, freedom means bouncing around Southeast Asia and working on a laptop with a working holiday visa or a nomad visa. To somebody else, freedom means being able to have a slow morning with their baby. It's not the same thing. And if we're all shooting for this, you know, Google Images version of freedom and security, we end up with somebody else's life.
Yeah.
And then we wonder why we're not happy.
Yeah,
It's really
absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, that's the premise of the work I do with people is, you know, but build the business you want to be owning. Don't build somebody else's business and then wonder like, what the heck?
Yeah.
And like you say, don't leave a 9 to 5 to create yourself another 9 to 5 that actually doesn't pay your superannuation, doesn't give you holiday pay, and doesn't pay you sick pay.
Yeah. And the boss is horrible and it's you.
And I say, I've got the best boss in the world. I think she's great.
That's the thing, that you have to be kind to yourself because you're your own boss.
Sometimes firm. She's fair, firm, but very compassionate.
There you go. There you go. And we get period leave. How good's that?
Well, I'm on the other side of that. I'm postmenopausal now, so but
postmenopausal leave.
Yes, I'll find a leave that I give myself anyway. Fantastic. But I'm mindful I do want to talk. I want to ask you about your book before we kind of run out of time. I mean, I could keep talking about this stuff forever, and thankfully we are actually going to do a pod swap, and we are going to be able to keep talking, so people can tune into this and tune into yours. So what is it that inspired the book? Had you always wanted to write a book? How did that come about?
Yeah, I'd always wanted to write a book in like a, you know, as do 80% of the population. Everybody goes, yeah, I'd love to write a book. I don't know what about. There was like a brief time in like 2016 when I decided I wanted to write a novel about long distance relationships. That did not last very long. Novel writing is incredibly difficult, and I don't think that that's my thing. But this book, look, in all honesty, maybe from a PR spin, I should romanticize this a little bit more. In all honesty, the way that a lot of modern publishing opportunities work is if you have a social media following, that's a warm audience. If you have a message, that's how you're more likely to get a book deal. So I was approached for this particular book. And then you kind of reverse pitch it. They go, you know, would you think about writing a book? And you kind of go, this is what I would write about. And off we go. So yeah, I don't want to kind of, you know, give pseudo tips on how to get a book deal because I got a book deal through my social media following. But the book itself,
congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. The book itself was its own complete learning experience because, and again, I think a lot of authors would probably say the same thing. It's not actually the book writing itself, it's the transformation that you have to go through in order to not only do the thing, because it is a lot of work, but to put your message out there. And this is where in this last 6-7 months I've really, and that's why I hired a creativity and confidence coach, because in sort of October of last year the book was basically done. It goes to the printer. It's a very long process before it comes out, and it was coming out in March. And apparently it's very common, but I honestly felt like I was the only person on earth experiencing this. By the time the book was finished, I hated every word. I didn't want anybody to see it. I would stand in the shower just staring at the wall with just words floating through my head of everything that everybody could say was wrong with it. I was panicking that like my first reviews would be my own would mirror my own insecurities about the book, and then I'd be like, oh my god, this is terrible. Everybody's going to hate it. Like, it wasn't that nobody would see it, because when you have an audience, some people will see it. I would almost have rather like nobody would see it. A lot of if you're putting a book out to the world with no warm audience, you're like, what if no one reads it? I was like, what if everyone reads it? It's awful. Nobody can read this. And I knew that I needed to turn that around, because you can't market a book unless you care about it, unless you believe in it.
No. And
And so
also the suffering that you were experiencing as well. I mean, that's painful.
oh, it was
You
really
know,
painful. And it really, going through the book writing process, I got myself in a lot of spirals, and I had to push my deadline out because I just like mentally could not do it. The writing itself is very easy for me. I write very
yeah.
fast. I was always that kid at school that wanted more paper in the exam because I just can't shut up. So writing it wasn't difficult. The word count didn't particularly scare me. I was like, oh, I'll hit 80,000 words, no problem.
Yeah.
Um, but it was, there were logistical challenges in terms of how do you structure 80,000 words? That's a lot. I'd gone into it going, I'm just going to start writing because that's normally what I do as a writer.
Yeah.
I'll just start writing and I'll shape it later. But I just wasn't prepared for how many pages and how clunky a Word document with 80,000 words and track changes in it is to handle. You can't. How long does it take you to read a book? 5, 6, 7 hours sometimes?
Yeah.
4 at the absolute least. You can't mold it in the way that you can an article or an email or a social
No.
media caption, believe it or not. So I found those logistical challenges, but the biggest thing was I just kept coming up against this block of like, this shouldn't, you don't need to write this book. Nobody needs this. You don't know
Yeah.
anything. This has already been done. Who on earth are you to write this book? What's everybody going to think? And I just couldn't. People go, oh, write your book for the person that needs it. And I was just, for so long, I was writing it for my critic and
Yeah.
trying to
Wow.
soften everything I was saying. And it was just like a protection thing, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I was really able to, I had to do a lot of work around forgiving myself for how the book process went, because even to this day, and again, everybody will say this about their book, but to this day, I have things I would do differently. I have things I
Yeah.
would add in. I have things I would change. I wish I had started the serious writing bit earlier in the process. Like I was
Mm.
about a full year, I think, from signing the contract to submitting the manuscript. But most of the actual work happened in the last 3 or 4 months. And now, having had a break from the book, or having the book been in my life for a while, I'm thinking of things that go, oh, I wish that was in my book, especially
Mm.
the type of book I've written. I've really written like a signature message of what I do. It's not, a lot of people go, you can put that in the second book. And I'm going, well, not really, because this book is not about one specific thing. It's really a container of all of my body of work. I won't really get the chance to add to that in a second book without repeating myself. That's why I want it in this book. I wish it was in this first version of this book, this Good with Money book. So there's those regrets, but I had to really forgive myself for the fact that I didn't start earlier, as I kept regretting, because I didn't really have a choice over whether I started earlier. I didn't start earlier because I couldn't start earlier, because I had tried and it wasn't
Yeah.
coming out. And I had to stop wanting to add things in, on an intellectual level, I would love to, but I had to emotionally accept what the book actually was, and
Yeah.
accept that even though I knew there was all this stuff that I would love to go in, it is still a packaged up 80,000 words of work, a full year of back and forth
Yeah.
editing, cover design, study that I was doing concurrently with writing the book,
Yeah.
my own experience, like I'm vulnerable in the book at times, and that is good enough, and that will help people. And nobody's ever going to
Absolutely.
know that such and such a framework that I thought about later on didn't go into the book.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, I work a lot with people about bringing compassion into their lives.
Mm,
I live my life through the lens of compassion. And I think it's times like this that it's so important that we really realize that in any situation, whether it's business, whether it's writing a book, whether it's life, we are doing the best we can with the skills and knowledge we have under the circumstances we're in at the time. And like you say, you would have liked to start earlier, but you couldn't.
mm.
Like you couldn't. And we can't change that. And I love that you got to this place of being able to be more forgiving of yourself and understanding that that's where you're at.
Mm.
And, you know, will you get some reviews that aren't great for your book? I imagine you will, because everybody does, right? And there's people out there that seem to love just giving negative feedback to people, which is a little sad. But and I'm sure you will get amazing reviews and help so many people.
Mm.
And the reality is, the work that you do can absolutely change the trajectory of somebody's life in terms of their spending, which can change so much about their life, about how they feel about themselves, about the problems and challenges they will or won't face because of the decisions they make around their money. I think it's absolutely fantastic. What would you say is, like, you've talked a lot about the stuff you've learned through that, but what do you think is the key thing that you've learned about yourself through writing that book?
Ooh, huge question. I think I've learned that I think it really taught me and pushed me to realize that I can do big things and hard things. Even at the beginning of that journey with that coach that I had worked with, when I was, for all intents and purposes, fairly broken by the experience and terrified about it coming out, I did still have this glimmer of, well, I did it. And there were points when I really thought, I actually don't know if I can do this. And I really had to push myself through that. So I think it really taught me perseverance and brought me back to, I think, my roots of being really determined. You know, I told that story before of when I came to Australia, and before I even came out here, I was bashing out 20 emails a day to any copywriting, marketing, digital agency I could find saying, can I come in and work with you, paid, free, whatever, I don't care. Can I come in and get experience with you? And I think through just, you know, we had COVID and we had lockdowns, and I had a bit of a job fiasco where I was in a job that was breaking my soul every day, and I'd gone into business and I'd written the book, and I've been a bit battered about by life, I think. But I think completing that process really kind of almost sounds a bit naff, but brought me back to myself and was like, you actually can do this. You don't have to give up on things because you can't do them. You actually can. And if I can do that, and I don't want to say if I can write a book, I can do anything, because a book's a book and people do much harder things. But if I can push myself through the battles I went through writing that book, I can do anything. And, you know, for anybody listening that's kind of like, oh, that's a really complete sort of like turnaround, don't get me wrong. I have doubts all the time still. It's kind of that analogy about mental health. Being well doesn't mean you're 10 out of 10 every single day. It's that you have more good days than bad days, and eventually you get more and more good days and less bad days. And that's kind of where it's at. I've had the last 2 weeks really kind of rocked by business related mental health stuff, I guess, self-doubt, comparisonitis. But I kind of know the process very well now, and I come out of it quite quickly, and I can, you know, I'm already feeling a bit better today. I love having these conversations that really kind of peps me up. But yeah, I don't want to, I say this because I personally found that hearing other people's experiences of overcoming battles and self-doubt and then feeling better, it can feel like, oh, well, I'm never going to feel like that because I feel so bad now. But it's not, you don't need every problem to go away to feel better. I am so much further on, but things aren't perfect and I don't feel confident all the time. But gradually you can get a bit better. So I hope that if anybody relates to that experience, whether you're writing a book or running a business or in a job or whatever, it can get better.
Absolutely. And it doesn't sound naff. That, you know, that reminds me of me in some ways. I did a PhD when I was a single mum, and I didn't speak to my supervisor for a year at one point because I didn't want to show him.
Yeah.
So I thought it was so crap.
But that's a huge achievement at the best of times, let alone being a single mom.
I'd dropped out of school early, so I'd seen myself as stupid. But I really resonate with what you're saying, because literally weeks before finishing it, I was like, I don't need a PhD anyway. That's stupid. Why do I even need a PhD? And I nearly dropped out of my PhD. And then handing it in and graduating for me was this message to all these younger versions of myself that, one, I'm not stupid, and two, you are capable of doing hard things.
Mm,
If you want something, go for it.
mm,
And
yep,
like you, I have my doubts about stuff. I turn things down sometimes still because I think,
mm,
oh, no, I'm not quite the person for that. And then afterwards, I might think, oh, why did I do that? I could have done that.
mm.
Now I tend to say yes more than I would say no to stuff. Within reason, I don't say yes to everything that comes across my bow. But I think it is those things, those experiences we go through that really show us who we are,
Mm.
so we can come back to that on those days where perhaps our mind is telling us we're somebody else.
Yeah. Oh, that's so true. And I think it's about having a toolkit as well. I
Yeah.
say I still have those doubts. Just 3 days ago, I ran a workshop that's about everything I know very, very well. And I feel like it went terribly. And I'm not
Mm.
going to toxic positivity myself and go, no, it wasn't. It was perfect, because it wasn't perfect. I know it wasn't. There were certain things I didn't say, but you learn when you're trying. And a lot of the time, you are actually serving yourself by not trying to take steps to get out of it. You're kind of there's something serving you by being in that kind of like wah
Yeah.
mentality. But when you get a little bit of breathing space to build in those tools, you can sort of learn to gradually accept, whether on a macro level like a book or a bad workshop, you can learn to accept the experience for what it was and see that there was value. Even last night, I was kind of lying there and I was like, oh, it was bad, but I know that I gave them that really good technique that I invented and they won't have heard of that before. And so that's really good. And actually, they probably haven't heard what I said there before. And that will be really interesting to them, even though I didn't deliver it the way that I have in the past and a
Yeah.
way that I wanted to. And I think you gradually learn to, I guess, shift your perspective. You allow yourself to feel horrible about it at the time. And then, whether it's over a period of days or hours or days or weeks, you can gradually accept that the work that you're doing is all valuable and you are valuable
Mm.
and you are worthy, even if the
Absolutely.
expression of it is not 100% bang on the way you wanted it, because it
Absolutely.
happens to everybody. And it doesn't mean that you're not improving and growing and getting better and sharing your impact.
Yeah. I think an important piece on that as well, Emma, is the language we use with ourselves. Because you're
Mhm.
telling yourself you ran a bad workshop.
Mm,
That's such a global thing. It was a
yeah.
bad workshop. And then you give examples there of things that were actually really helpful. So
Mm,
it's like I ran a workshop and parts of it didn't go as I'd
yeah.
wanted.
Yeah.
I perhaps didn't present this thing the way I wanted. But
Exactly.
that
And that's how it's
real
evolved
global,
throughout the
it's like,
week.
yeah, it's like,
Mm,
yeah. So we need to be mindful, don't we, of acknowledging how we feel and then being mindful of the language we use around that. And
exactly.
then moving on and saying, well, what
Yeah.
can I learn from that then? And how might I want to do that differently next time? Or what might I
Mm,
add in differently? And keep going because the work
yeah.
you're doing needs to be out there. It's so valuable for people. So
Yeah.
valuable.
It's sorry, just one last thing on that. I think I've noticed the difference is where I would have, you speak about global language, and also I think for me, the the real difference I've seen is previously when I would run something that was quote unquote bad, or I would have an experience where something didn't go the way that I wanted it to, I would kind of box that off as that experience and then vow that everything was going to be different from then on. Whereas
Mm,
actually the benefit is unpicking that experience, not
yeah.
not dwelling on it,
Yeah.
but unpicking it and seeing it as part of the
Yeah.
process and part of being a human being.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's so easy to be like, well, I'm not going to do that again, or this is what I need to work on, or I need to take this course and then it will be
Yeah.
better.
Yeah.
It all comes back to the same thing. Yeah,
It really does. Oh my goodness. We have tricky minds, right?
we really do.
So I have two more questions I want to ask you.
Mhm.
One of them is what would be like the key things for you in how you take care of yourself as a business owner?
Time management is a really
Yeah.
big thing for me. I really like to, on a Sunday or sometimes a Friday, kind of depends how my week goes, look at what's ahead for the next week so that I have my head around kind of what kind of week it's going to be. Do I
Yeah.
have a bit of a chill week? Do I have a real hustle week? Hustle, quote unquote. I know it's a dirty word, but sometimes you've got a hustle week. And then trying to kind of look a little bit ahead of myself so that I don't have two hustle weeks back to back, like knowing
Yeah.
my own capacity, getting to, like I said, business, greatest a personal development experience, you get to know yourself on such a deep level that
Yeah.
you start to learn when you do, like, really, again, not boxing off your feelings and trying to change them forevermore, leaning into your feelings and trying to spot patterns of, God, when I go into state, it's actually exhausting, even if it shouldn't be. You know, you might go, well, wasn't that exhausting? You went to Sydney for one meeting and came back. But if you learn the pattern that you feel crap the
Yeah.
day after you've been into state, don't then book a presentation that day.
Yeah.
Actually look after yourself. If somebody says, can we do it on the 17th? Then you're going, oh God, I'm going to be into state. Don't feel like you have to say yes. Go,
Yeah.
actually, no. Um,
Absolutely.
so that's been a big, like, the time management and organization and trying to work with myself rather than against myself. And then that example kind of feeds me into the second one. I think trying to build boundaries. And this is
Yes.
really, really hard because, especially as a female and especially as a people pleaser and in an industry like finance, it's really, when you set boundaries, the biggest barrier I've come up against, aside from like my own people pleaser tendencies, is it's really hard as a woman to be seen as difficult to work with, and the
Mm.
pull to be seen as really easy to work with is really difficult, and I found it very hard to find the line between being great to work with, because
Yeah.
especially when you're working with maybe sponsors or corporate clients that you're presenting a workshop for,
Yeah.
you want to be good to work with. It's not about, you can have the best boundaries in the world, but if people think you're an asshole to work with,
Yeah.
that's
Of
not,
course.
for whatever reason, you want to be good to work with and you want to, be responsive and take feedback on board and add in the things that they want you to add in or whatever. But I found it really difficult to find the line between when am I
Mm.
people pleasing and when am I genuinely being good to work with? And also, what is that definition for this relationship? And
Yeah.
for that, particularly around money, I find it very difficult to, particularly whether you're charging for something or you're chasing up an invoice or something. I always find that when women are seen to be in it for money, the way that is received isn't necessarily the best. Um,
Mm.
Particularly when you're, yeah, when you're asking for your worth or you're charging what you charge, women are battered down very, very
Mm.
easily of, well, this is our budget. And then you go, well, these are my prices, pay them or
Yeah.
don't. And then suddenly you're difficult to work with. And it's
Yeah.
been, having boundaries is a really big way of taking care of myself, because I found so much that through trying to be good to work with and taking on every single edit and every single piece of feedback and, working with their budget rather than mine,
Yeah.
um, it might serve you in the short term, but in the long term, it just adds to resentment and it burns you out and it's not
Absolutely.
good.
Oh,
So
there's
I
such
try and
toxic narratives for around women, and yeah, I think you and I need to have another. I need to get you back on the podcast because there's so much we could delve into around this.
yeah,
Oh my gosh.
I think the biggest thing for me with those conversations is not replying, like thinking about it
Yeah,
before I
respond,
reply,
don't react. Yeah,
because often I'll find that my first reaction will be either, yeah, okay, I'll do it, and I need to think about it, or it will be, I'm not doing that. That's ridiculous, depending on what kind of mood I'm in. It's
yeah,
ridiculous of you to ask me that, particularly if it's like an edit or something. And then I kind of, yeah, I need to think about it and come back to it before I respond, because
yeah,
otherwise you're not going to respond in the way that honors your boundaries. And yeah, boundaries can be blurry. Sometimes you kind of think that saying no to absolutely everything that isn't exactly perfect for you is having good boundaries. I think social
yeah.
media fosters that thinking a lot. And it's
Yeah,
not
they've got to be
true. You do
flexible. Hey,
compromise. Yeah, of
healthy
course.
boundaries are flexible,
Because you want
and
good
but
relationships in business.
yeah, and you make a good point because, when we do respond immediately, we're oftentimes, depending on the mood, can be from this threat-based thinking. And if we slow down and we give ourselves time to respond, not react, we access our wisdom. We
Mm,
come from a calmer mind. We're
mm,
actually more likely to be values aligned. We're more likely to be flexible where it's helpful for us to be flexible
mm.
and just make better decisions, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Completely agree.
That's such good points. These are things I teach in my course around time management, boundaries, all
Mm,
sorts of stuff, values, because they are so important. We
mm.
really need to get to know ourselves well so we can run our businesses in a way that work.
Mm.
So my next question I ask to all my guests, and I'm always curious about the answer on this one. If you could meet your 80-year-old self today,
Mm.
what do you think she would say to you?
80-year-old self. Ooh. Oh, I don't think about I usually think a lot of the time it's like if you can meet your 18-year-old self. I don't usually think about being old. I don't know why. Um, I think she would say, "That was fun, wasn't it?"
I love that. That's
What a time.
fantastic. That's fantastic.
I hope anyway.
That's brilliant. But I mean, that
Mm.
speaks to that value for you
Mm.
of life being fun for you, yeah?
Mm.
And I think when we can connect with that, when we make decisions in our lives, we can tune in and think,
Mm.
whether it's your 50 or you're a lot younger than I am, whether it's your 50-year-old self, 60-year-old self, 80-year-old self, what would they thank you for
Mm.
doing today?
Mm.
So they've lived a good life.
Yeah,
Yeah.
having fun.
Fantastic. Yeah. Oh, Emma, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting. I could keep chatting all day with you.
Me too.
I'll put things in the show notes where people can find you. But where's the number one best place if they want to kind of jump on and follow you?
Oh, I'm on Instagram far too much, so you'll probably find me there trying to put my phone down and read a book, but scrolling anyway. So I'm at the dot broke generation on Instagram, and also my book is called Good with Money. It's bright yellow with pink text. You can't miss it. It's in all major retailers and many independents as well.
And I will put a link to that as well in the show notes. Thank you again so much for joining me today. It's been an absolute pleasure. And I just know that people are going to get a lot out of the wisdom that you've shared.
Thanks, Hayley. It's been so great to chat. I'm so glad we're doing another episode on my show.
I'll see you on yours.
See you in a minute.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for sharing this time with me today. I hope our time together has been helpful and supportive. If there has been something in this episode that you have found helpful, I invite you to share it with another person you think might benefit. If you've benefited in any way from the podcast, please do me a favour and show my pod some love by giving it a 5-star rating and review. Ratings, reviews and shares really help to increase awareness and reach of the podcast, allowing this helpful information to be spread more widely. All reviews are welcome and much appreciated. And if you do share on socials, remember to tag me so I can see who's listening, because you never really know over here in podcast land, and I can reach out personally to say thank you. If you'd like to be notified when the next episode airs, please use the link in the show notes to join our mailing list. If you have any particular topics you'd like to learn more about, or guests you'd like to hear from, please reach out and let me know. I'd love to hear from you. Music and editing by Nissa Ray. Thanks, Nissa. I wish you all well in your relationship with yourself and your business. May you go well and go gently. And remember, if you thrive, your business will too.